Can I first of all introduce our first speaker, David Campbell-Bannerman, has been a member of the European Parliament, formerly, and shall we say, knows a few secrets there. He's also a patron of conservative democracy, and without any further ado, I'd like to wish him to address you all and hear what we have to say. There'll be plenty of time for question and answer at the end after the speakers have all spoken.
Thank you. Well, thank you, Mike, Chairman, and thank you to John Strafford and team and Graham for the great work they do. John Strafford, by the way, is a walking encyclopedia on the party constitution. I had to call him a number of times for the Boris ballot. He was in the south of France, moving in esteemed circles. But he was full of information, and I'm always grateful, and he's a real trooper for the party, I have to say. And one day we'll have a John Strafford building of democracy for the party. I'm determined it will happen. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I wanted to talk today, if I may, about two aspects relative to party democracy. One was the people have expressed the Boris ballot campaign, which I initiated. I want to say a bit about that, and then about the core messages of the campaign for conservative democracy, particularly that of elections, elected party chairman in particular, how important that is in my view. Just then on the Boris ballot, because people have raised this with me and are interested in what happened on that and what it was all about. I initiated the Boris ballot campaign because I was very angry about how Boris Johnson had been treated. And it wasn't just about Boris, of course, it was about the future of the party and how damaging, potentially divisive it would be to remove him in such circumstances. And because my timeline on Twitter, etc., was lighting up with a lot of members who were really, really concerned about how he'd been treated. And of course, the knock-on effect is they were going to spoil the ballots, and you could then sort of derail the whole sort of leadership campaign between, well, ultimately Liz Truss and Rishi Sunak, and create huge divisions for the future of the party, because all of us here are loyal to the party and want it to succeed. We're not here to criticise it, bring it down or whatever. It's about making it work better so it can safeguard and promote our interests and keep Labour out particularly. So on the Boris ballot, I mean, it occurred to me that you could have a confirmatory ballot, as I call it, which would be a yes-no on whether Boris, who is then obviously still Prime Minister and leader of the party, whether he should continue or not. And it seemed to me that for the purpose of actually managing the process, given the lot of anger at how he'd been removed, that if you had a yes-no vote, then if it was no, we could all move on, and the new leader coming in would have that sort of assurity that things had changed, and if it's a yes, he would stay on, and the membership would be saying to MPs, who it was down to them that got rid of him, we're not happy about this, we want him to stay. So it seems to me to be very much part of democracy, and the membership, whatever one views of Boris, the membership having the opportunity to state their views about the leader of the party, which ultimately, obviously, the membership decide. So that's what happened to the Boris ballot, and I would point out, obviously, Boris Johnson achieved the majority of 80, the highest since Margaret Thatcher in 1987. And when you look at the record of other prime ministers, I mean, obviously we had 13 years in the cold under Blair and Brown, but Cameron squeezed in, but had to have a coalition, so it was hardly an outright victory. Again, we squeezed in thanks to the referendum on Brexit in 2015. And John Major, going back there, he only got a 20-seat majority, And so when you actually put this all together, you know, we've only just managed to get our claws on government, get our nails in, you know, until Boris Johnson delivered an 80-seat majority. So I felt that, you know, whatever we were doing, whatever we thought of him, and I wanted to change policies, I want to park net zero, for example, you know, because that I think is just unaffordable, particularly at this point of time. And I say park it till, you know, China and India stop building coal-fired power stations, for example. So I think there was always going to be policy debates, and quite rightly, and I think actually Liz Truss has come up with some fantastic policies that easily, you know, Boris could have had as leader, and we could be campaigning on. So that's what drove it, and people asked what it was about. But it seemed to me that there came a point where Central Office weren't playing ball on it. They refused to, or they isn't ready to embrace the idea of a yes-no ballot, a confirmatory ballot. They had the powers under the Constitution. Again, John was saying, you know, the party board has ultimate powers, actually, to do whatever's in the best interest of the party. It has sort of this extraordinary power. And they could have done that, but of course they didn't. And so there came a point where I felt, well, I'd have to personally not pursue the Boris ballot campaign anymore, but ensure that Rishi Sunak didn't win. That's my personal view, and I backed Liz Truss, and I'm glad I had, and I'm glad she's there. But I think there is a role for Boris in the future, and I hope he comes back and campaigns for us. And you know, he has an extraordinary sort of charisma, as we know, from London. I helped him in London. I ended up with, my whole team was calling Labour and Lib Dems, and I said, is there something wrong here? Why are we calling just Labour and Lib Dems? They said, no, absolutely right, you know, and they would actually say, we're not normally Conservative, but we do like Boris, you know, and we're going to back Boris. And that is the red wall effect, which is again why I sort of thought, whatever one thinks of him, why throw away an electoral winner in that circumstance? So that explains the Boris ballot, but you know, time moves on with politics. I fully endorse Liz Truss, I'm fully loyal to her and backing her up. And, you know, as I say, we move on. But the lesson I would draw from the Boris ballot campaign, obviously Lord Peter Crudders, I would give full credit for fully, he called me up and said, look, I'm going to back you, whatever costs I'll cover. And he's continuing to campaign by Twitter, and, you know, you can follow him. And he's a terrific Democrat. He's paid millions to the party. He was a great treasurer. You know, he's very, very loyal to the party, and that is continuing. But I think the main question for democracy is, you know, you've got this problem where the membership has a different view to MPs, and the MPs brought down Boris, but the membership could well. Every poll was saying the membership would actually like him back again. Hence the confirmatory ballot, or the Boris ballot. And the other thing is, you know, as John has campaigned on, you know, having 4 candidates going to the membership rather than just 2, because it rather controls it. You know, if 4 candidates went to the membership, you'd have a very different contest, and probably far more democratic, I would say. And that is part of what CCD actually campaigns on, I think. So the problem is that it's like now, you've got a problem, you know, Liz Truss is under pressure because she's got the support of the membership through this, you know, massive hustings process, and I'm glad they didn't stop it. I think there was indications they might actually cancel the last hustings, like Norwich was one I personally involved with, and I went to London. But, you know, at least the membership actually got a democratic choice, and there were many people at the Wembley one, with 5,000 people in London, who actually hadn't made their mind up, or claimed they hadn't made their mind up, you know, and they were actually going there to listen to the argument. So that was good democracy, and well done to the party for doing that. But you know, this kind of, you know, the 1922 committee, Peter is far more overt about this, Peter Crudders, than I am. But I know Graham Brady as a friend, man of integrity in my view, but he is working within the Constitution. And the 1922 does seem to have the right to sort of, you know, set all the rules, and the party board doesn't do much about it. So I think you have to address the Constitution when it comes to leadership elections for the future. Now, John has touched on, or if I may just go to elected chairman. Now, the second part of my talk is, this is something CCD have campaigned for, and I think it's really, really essential that the party chairman is elected by the membership. I do believe in democracy. I lost my job over it as an MEP, as touched on. Very happy to have Brexit because I believe, in national self-interest, self-government. I believe in democracy, and then I saw the European Parliament is not democratic. The power lies with unelected bureaucrats. But democracy matters, and I think that the programme of having a chairman of the party board elected, deputy chairman elected, treasurer, chairman of the candidates committee, that'd be nice, wouldn't it? And the chairman of the policy forum, all elected, means, who's the boss then, basically, is the question. That's what democracy does. The boss is the membership. It's not top-down messages from on high saying what people should believe. It's elected party chairman can actually represent the members' view to the party leader, the Prime Minister. And that, I think, is very important. It's not about doing down or weakening the Prime Minister. It's strengthening their position. They need to know what the party thinks on policy, on whether to have an election or not. And I have to say, I'd heard this, but I happened to meet a former party chairman on a cruise, actually. It's a small world. But we had dinner, and I actually asked him a question. I said, were you consulted in 2017, this is Mr. McLaughlin, Patrick McLaughlin, about the general election? And he said, no, you're right, I wasn't consulted. And he said that had I been consulted, I would have said, I don't think it's a very good idea. Now, that to me is why you need an elected party chairman, because an elected party chairman, the Prime Minister would not dare do it, because the elected party chairman would be representing the membership views. Many of you are saying, what on earth are you doing going to the country early and on this basis? To me, it's a good example of how democracy really works. And I think it would give elected party chairman and these deputy chairmen and other posts an authority and a strength which we don't have at the moment. I think all these elections matter because it gives control to members. There's a reason why members are, paid to subscriptions. We've got a lot of people who vote for us but aren't members, and what do they get for their membership income or the sub they pay?